June looked out the large window at the endless stars. 6 months had passed since she came to live on Nexus 7, the massive space station where representatives from all planets met. As Earth's ambassador, she was supposed to make friends with alien species. But things were not going well. "Human, move aside. Your soft body blocks my path." June turned to see Commander Day towering over her. Like all Tavari, he stood 8 feet tall with a body covered in natural metal plates. 4 strong, arms hung at his sides, each able to bend steel bars with little effort. His yellow eyes looked down at her with clear dislike. "I apologize, Commander," June said, stepping back. She kept her voice calm, even though anger burned inside her. "I was just admiring the view." "Views do not strengthen the Confederation," Day said. "Perhaps that explains why humans waste time on such things, and why you remain so weak." June bit her tongue. She had learned it was pointless to argue with the Tavari. Their entire culture was built around physical strength. To them, humans were just fragile creatures with soft skin and breakable bones. "The council meeting begins in 1 hour," she said instead. "I have prepared some ideas about the trade routes near Earth that might benefit everyone." Commander Day made a sound like metal scraping against metal, a Tavari laugh. "I'm sure the council will consider your ideas with all the seriousness they deserve." He looked pointedly at her hands. "How do you even hold writing tools with those brittle bone sticks?" Without waiting for an answer, he walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing down the hallway. June sighed and looked at her hands. Before becoming Earth's ambassador, she had been famous for her sculptures. Her fingers could shape clay, stone, and metal into forms that moved people to tears. But here on Nexus 7, her human abilities meant nothing. In her quarters, June changed into her formal diplomatic uniform. The blue and silver colors represented Earth, though no one here seemed to care. On her desk sat a small wooden box, the only personal item she had brought from home. Inside were her most treasured sculpting tools. Her fingers traced their familiar shapes, bringing back memories of her studio on Earth with its tall windows and the smell of clay. Her communication device buzzed. It was Hyun, the station's human doctor. "Are you ready for another exciting council meeting?" Hyun asked, her face appearing on the screen. Unlike June, Hyun had been on Nexus 7 for 3 years. She understood the station politics better than anyone. "Ready to be ignored for 3 hours?" "Always," June replied with a small smile. "Don't let them get to you," Hyun said. "The Tavari respect only one thing. We can't change that. But we're not here to arm wrestle. We're here to share ideas, to learn from each other." June shook her head. "Sometimes I wonder why Earth bothered joining the Confederation at all." "Because we need them more than they need us, at least for now," Hyun said. "Anyway, I'll see. You there. Try not to punch any Tavari today." "Their metal skin would just break my brittle bone sticks," June joked, holding up her hands. The council chamber was a massive round room with seats arranged by species. Humans had seats near the back, far from the powerful central table where the Tavari and 3 other physically strong species sat. Size and strength determined everything here. As usual, June listened while others talked over her. Commander Day presented military reports. Other species discussed trade, territory, and technology. When June finally got her turn to speak, many representatives had already left or were talking among themselves. "Earth proposes a new trade route through Sector 7, she began. "Our calculations show it would be 30% more efficient than—" "Humans and their obsession with efficiency," interrupted a Tavari official. "Perhaps if you spent more time developing your bodies instead of your ships, you would not need such shortcuts." Laughter filled the room. June continued her presentation, but few were listening. This was how every meeting went. After the council adjourned, June walked slowly back toward her quarters. In the main corridor, emergency. Lights suddenly flashed red. The station's AI voice came over the speakers. "Attention all personnel. Temporal anomaly detected in Sector 5. Security Level 3 alert is now in effect. All non-essential movement is restricted." People rushed in different directions. June moved to the nearest information terminal and pressed her hand against it. The screen showed a swirling mass of energy near one of the Confederation planets. Text scrolled beside the image, describing unusual time distortions affecting ships and communication. Ambassador. A voice made her turn. It was Commander Day with 2 other Tavari officials. This is a military matter. Return to your quarters. What's happening? June asked. If there's danger, Earth should be informed. A temporal disturbance. Nothing your species would understand, Day said dismissively. The Tavari Defense Force will handle it. I studied quantum mechanics before becoming a sculptor and diplomat, June said. I might be able to help analyze the data. The Tavari exchanged looks. Then Day laughed. You want to help? With what? Those? He pointed at her hands. This is not clay to play with, human. This is a real threat requiring real strength. Physical. Strength isn't the only kind of strength, June argued, her patience wearing thin. It is the only kind that matters, Day replied. Now return to your quarters as ordered. As the Tavari walked away, June heard one say, Can you imagine a human trying to operate temporal equipment? They would snap their twigs just pressing the buttons. More laughter followed. Back in her room, June paced angrily. The station trembled slightly, something that had never happened before. Whatever this anomaly was, it was affecting Nexus 7 itself. Her screen lit up with an incoming message from Hyun. Her friend's face looked worried. Are you seeing this? Hyun asked without greeting. The medical bay is preparing for casualties. They're saying 3 ships near the anomaly have already disappeared. Day blocked me from getting information, June said. What exactly is happening? Some kind of time distortion. It's growing. The Tavari are planning to send ships with special weapons to destroy it, but nobody knows if that will work. Some scientists think it might make things worse. June thought for a moment. Can you send me the data they're collecting? The raw numbers? I'll try. But why? Because, June said, opening the wooden box that held her sculpting tools. I think I might see something they're missing. The data appeared on June's screen as colorful waves and patterns. Hyun had managed to send her the information about the temporal anomaly, despite the station's security protocols. Now June sat in her quarters, studying the numbers while the space station trembled around her. This is strange, she whispered to herself. The patterns in the data reminded her of something. She closed her eyes, trying to remember. Back on Earth, she had worked with sound waves before becoming a sculptor. She had created art that changed with music, sculptures that vibrated with different tones. The temporal anomaly moved in similar patterns. It wasn't random. It had rhythm. Her communication device buzzed. It was Hyun again. Things are getting worse, Hyun said, her voice low. 3 more ships have disappeared. The Tavari are planning to attack the anomaly with some kind of time missiles. That's a terrible idea, June replied, her eyes still on the data. Look at these patterns. The anomaly responds to energy. If they attack it, they might make it stronger. Try telling that to Commander Day, Hyun said. He's gathering the crisis team now. All Tavari, of course. No weak humans invited. June hardly heard her friend's bitter words. She was too focused on the screen. The patterns were definitely familiar. She had seen something like this years ago when she had sculpted with a special material called resonant crystal. The crystal would change shape depending on the sound waves around it. Hyun, I need to try something, June said suddenly. Do you know if there are any star tears on the station? Star tears? You mean those shiny crystals from the garden level? The decorative ones? Yes, those exactly. Sure, the botanical garden has them growing in Section 5. The Tavari think they're just pretty stones. But why? I need to get some. As many as possible. Hyun looked confused. June, we're in the middle of a crisis. The station's on lockdown. You can't just go picking flowers and crystals. Trust me, June said, already putting on her jacket. I have an idea. Getting to the botanical garden wasn't easy. Security drones patrolled the corridors and several areas were blocked off. But June had spent months mapping the station's layout in her free time. She knew the maintenance tunnels that the cleaning robots used, narrow passages that the large Tavari rarely entered. The garden level was quiet and dim. Emergency power had reduced the artificial sunlight to save energy. Plants from 100 worlds grew here, creating a peaceful place that reminded June of Earth. She moved quickly to Section 5, where crystal formations grew among strange blue plants. Star tears weren't actually tears, of course. They were crystalline formations that naturally grew on several planets. On Earth, similar crystals were used in advanced quantum computers because of their unique properties. But here on Nexus 7, the Tavari just used them for decoration. June carefully collected several small clusters, placing them in her pockets. As she was reaching for a particularly large formation, a security drone floated into the section. "Identify yourself," the mechanical voice demanded. "Ambassador June from Earth," she replied, trying to sound official. "I'm collecting botanical samples for analysis. Section 5 is restricted during security protocols," the drone said. "Return to your assigned quarters." June nodded and backed away, the crystals safely hidden in her pockets. She took a different route back to her quarters, avoiding the main corridors where Tavari guards would be patrolling. Back in her room, she emptied her pockets onto her desk. The star tears glittered under the lights, each one a different color. She opened her wooden box and took out her sculpting tools. "Let's see if I'm right," she whispered. For the next few hours, June carefully worked with the crystals. Her fingers, so mocked by the Tavari, moved with precision no metal hand could match. She shaped and arranged the star tears into specific patterns based on the data from the anomaly. When the crystals were difficult to shape, she used her smallest tools to make precise cuts. By the time Hyun visited her again, June had created a small model on her desk. It looked like a beautiful sculpture of interconnected crystal spirals. "What is that?" Hyun asked, staring at the creation. "A test," June replied. She pulled up the anomaly data on her screen. "Watch." She gently tapped one of the crystal spirals with a tool. It began to vibrate, creating a soft humming sound. The other crystals started vibrating too, each producing a slightly different tone. Together, they created a complex harmony. On the screen, the pattern of the anomaly shifted slightly. "Did you see that?" June asked excitedly. The anomaly responded. Hyun's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Your little crystal thing affected a temporal anomaly half a system away?" "It's quantum resonance," June explained. "These crystals connect through quantum fields. They can affect things at a distance, especially temporal fields." She looked at her friend. "But this is just a small model. I need something bigger. And I need access to better equipment to test my theory." Hyun thought for a moment. "The medical lab has quantum imaging equipment. We use it for deep tissue scans." She lowered her voice. "I could get you in there tonight when the shift changes. No one uses it then?" "Perfect," June said, carefully wrapping her crystal creation in a soft cloth. That night, they sneaked into the medical lab. The station was still on high alert, with announcements regularly updating everyone about the growing anomaly. Now it threatened 3 more star systems, and the Tavari military efforts weren't working. In the lab, June placed her crystal model on the scanning table. Hyun operated the equipment, generating a 3-dimensional image of the quantum fields around the crystals. "There." June pointed at the screen. "See how the fields extend beyond the physical structure? Now compare it to the anomaly data." The patterns matched. "This is incredible," Hyun said. "You've basically created a tiny version of the anomaly, but in reverse." "Not exactly reverse," June corrected. "More like a counterbalance. If I can build a larger version with the right frequency, it might stabilize the real anomaly." "So what do you need?" June was about to answer when the lab door opened. They both froze. Commander Day stood in the doorway, his metal face showing surprise that quickly turned to anger. "What are humans doing in restricted areas during an emergency?" he demanded, his forearms tensing. "Commander," June said, stepping forward. "I've been studying the anomaly. I think I found a solution." Day looked at the small crystal structure on the table. "You play with shiny rocks while worlds are in danger?" His voice was cold. "This is why humans remain at the bottom of the Confederation. You waste time on trinkets while real warriors fight." "It's not a trinket," June insisted. "It's a model of a device that could stop the anomaly. See for yourself." She pointed to the screen showing the quantum fields. Commander. Day barely glanced at it. Enough. Both of you will return to your quarters immediately. This is now a military operation. The Tavari Defense Force launches our temporal missiles in 12 hours. Your missiles will make it worse, June said, her voice rising. The anomaly responds to energy. You'll just make it stronger and larger. The decision has been made by those strong enough to make it, Day replied. He reached for June's crystal model. This childish distraction ends now. No. June moved to protect her work, but one of Day's metal arms easily pushed her aside. She stumbled and fell, watching helplessly as he picked up her delicate creation, but, before he could crush it, a new voice spoke from the doorway. I suggest you put that down, Commander. Everyone turned to see another Tavari standing there. This one was slimmer than Day, with markings that identified him as a scientist rather than a warrior. Senior Scientist Bin, Day said, lowering the crystal model. This does not concern the Science Division. A temporal anomaly that threatens multiple systems absolutely concerns my division, Bin replied calmly. And I find it interesting that a human has created something that appears to affect it. He looked at June with curious yellow eyes. Perhaps you should explain your discovery to me, Ambassador. Senior Scientist Bin listened carefully as June explained her theory. Unlike Commander Day, he asked thoughtful questions and studied the data on the screen with genuine interest. Fascinating, he said when she finished. You believe these crystals can create a resonance pattern that would counter the temporal anomaly? Yes, June replied. But I need more materials and time to build a larger version. Commander Day made a dismissive sound. This is absurd. We do not have time for human arts and crafts. Yet your military solution has failed 3 times already, Bin pointed out. Perhaps a different approach is worth considering. The two Tavari stared at each other. Even though they were the same species, they couldn't be more different. Day was all metal muscle and military precision. Bin was slimmer, with more delicate markings on his metal skin that showed his scientific rank. The Council has approved the missile launch, Day said firmly. That decision stands. Then we have 48 hours before launch, Bin replied. Enough time for the ambassador to test her theory without interfering with military operations. Day seemed ready to argue, but his communication device buzzed. After checking it, he growled something in the Tavari language. I am needed at command, he said. This discussion is not over. He pointed at June. Your theory changes nothing. After he left, Bin turned to June and Hyun. You now have 48 hours to prove your concept works. What do you need? June couldn't believe her luck. More star tiers, a lot more, and access to the materials lab. I can arrange that, Bin said. But I must warn you, if this fails, there will be consequences. The Tavari do not tolerate wasted resources. It won't fail, June said with more confidence than she felt. Over the next day, June barely slept. The materials lab became her temporary home as she worked non-stop on her creation. Bin provided everything she requested: more star tiers, special, metals that could conduct quantum energy, and tools that could work with the delicate crystals. Hyun visited when she could, bringing food and encouraging words. The anomaly has expanded again, she reported during one visit. 2 more planets are being evacuated. People are starting to panic. How much time do we have? June asked, not looking up from her work. Less than 24 hours before Day launches the missiles, and he's not happy about your project. He's been telling everyone it's a waste of resources. June finally looked up, wiping sweat from her forehead. Her fingers were red and sore from the detailed work. Some of the crystal edges had cut her skin, leaving small bloody marks. Let him talk, she said. I just need to finish this. What she was building looked less like a weapon and more like an artwork. It was a complex arrangement of crystal filaments, each thinner than a human hair, connected in patterns that followed mathematical principles. She had combined her knowledge of quantum physics with the design skills she had learned as a sculptor on Earth. "This is not what I expected," Bin commented as he observed her work. He had been watching her for hours, his yellow eyes studying her hands with increasing interest. "What did you expect?" June asked, as she carefully connected two crystal threads. "Device, a machine, something with buttons and power sources." He gestured at her creation. "This looks like art," June finished for him. "Because it is art. Art and science together." She paused, looking at the Tavari scientist. "Your people think my hands are weak because they can't bend metal or break stone. But they can do something your hands can't." "And what is that?" "Create with precision." She held up a crystal thread so thin it was almost invisible. "Could you shape something this delicate with your metal fingers?" Bin looked at his own hands, each finger thick and strong like the rest of his body. "No," he admitted. "I could not." "Different does not mean weaker," June said. "It just means different." As the hours passed, her creation grew larger and more complex. It now filled a table in the center of the lab, a shimmering network of crystal and metal that seemed to catch light from all directions. When certain parts moved, they created soft musical tones that hung in the air. The station trembled more frequently now as the anomaly's effects grew stronger. Emergency announcements came over the speakers every hour, warning people to prepare for possible evacuation. June worked through it all, her hands moving with practiced skill. Years of sculpting had taught her patience and precision. Now those same skills might save countless lives. "I need to test it," she finally said, standing back from her work. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, and her hands shook slightly from exhaustion. "How?" Bin asked. "It's not connected to any power source." "It doesn't need external power," June explained. "It draws energy from the quantum field itself." She pointed to the center of the structure where a particularly large star tear crystal sat. This main crystal acts as a focus point. She picked up a small metal rod, one of her sculpting tools from Earth. With careful precision, she tapped the central crystal. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, the crystal began to glow, with a soft blue light. The glow spread to the connected filaments traveling through the entire structure until the whole creation pulsed with gentle light. A low humming filled the room, rising and falling in a complex pattern. On the nearby screen that showed the anomaly, the swirling mass of energy flickered. "It's responding," Bin said, his voice filled with surprise. "Your device is actually affecting the anomaly, but it's not enough," June said, studying the readings. "This is just a small version. I need to build something much larger to fully stabilize the anomaly." The lab door opened with a loud bang. Commander Day stood there with 4 armed Tavari. "Guards, time is up," he announced. "The missile launch has been moved forward. All resources are now directed to military operations." "But we've made progress," Bin argued, gesturing to the screen. "The human's device shows promise." "Promise is not results," Day replied coldly. "The anomaly threatens 17 worlds now. We need action, not experiments." "Give me 12 more hours," June pleaded. "I can build a larger version." "Impossible," Day said. "You've wasted enough time and materials." He turned to his guards. "Secure this lab. All projects not related to military operations are suspended." June stood in front of her creation. "You can't do this. If you launch those missiles, you'll make everything worse. My solution will work if you just give me time." For a moment, Dai seemed to consider her words. Then he stepped forward, towering over June. "Your hands may create pretty things, human, but they cannot save worlds. Only Tavari strength can do that." He reached out one metal arm toward June's creation. "No," she shouted, stepping between Day and her work. "Your strength shapes nothing but destruction. These hands you mock create with precision your kind will never understand." The room fell silent. No one had ever spoken to a Tavari commander like that, especially not a human. Day's yellow eyes narrowed. He raised his arm, and for a terrible moment, June thought he would strike her down. "Commander," Bin's voice cut through the tension. "Before you destroy the human's work, I must inform you that I've been monitoring the anomaly closely. It's changing in ways our scientists don't understand. The council should be made aware of all options before proceeding. Day hesitated, his arm still raised. I request a formal review, Bin continued. By Confederation law, you must grant this before military action if a scientific alternative exists. Day lowered his arm slowly. Very well. You have 12 hours to present your case to the full council. He looked at June with cold eyes. But the missiles will launch immediately after, regardless of the outcome. As he and his guards left, June turned to Bin. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, the Tavari scientist replied. Now you have 12 hours to prove that human hands really can save worlds. News of June's project spread quickly through Nexus 7. Some people came to the lab just to see what the human ambassador was building. Most left shaking their heads, unable to understand how the beautiful but strange creation could stop a temporal anomaly that now threatened entire star systems. 12 hours isn't enough, Hyun said as she helped June move her creation to a transport cart. You need to present to the council and finish building the full-size version. Then I won't sleep, June replied simply. Her eyes were already red, and her hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. But determination kept her moving. Senior scientist Bin entered the lab with news. I've been studying the anomaly's growth pattern. At its current rate of expansion, we have less than 15 hours before it reaches Nexus 7. What about the evacuations? Hyun asked. Ongoing but difficult. The anomaly affects ship engines near its edges. 3 evacuation vessels have already been lost. Bin looked at June's creation. The council meeting is in 4 hours. Will you be ready? June nodded. But I need to know the exact location where the missiles will be launched. My device needs to be there instead. The Central Observatory Dome, Bin said. It has direct line of sight to the anomaly and the strongest transmission equipment. June thought for a moment. Perfect. The dome's crystal structure will actually help amplify my device. She looked at Bin. Can you get us access? Difficult, but possible, the Tavari scientist said. Commander Day has placed guards at all strategic locations. He really doesn't want my solution to work, does he? June asked. It's not personal, Bin explained. Tavari military doctrine does not allow for last-minute changes and... He hesitated. And what? Hyun pressed. And if a human succeeds where Tavari strength failed, it would cause complications in our society. June understood. The Tavari had built their entire civilization around the idea that physical strength determined one's worth. If she proved that wrong, it would shake their culture to its core. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone, June said. I just want to stop this anomaly before more people die. I know, Bin said. That's why I'm helping you. For the next few hours, June continued working on her creation while Hyun prepared her council presentation. The station trembled more frequently now as the anomaly's effects grew stronger. Emergency announcements came every 30 minutes, each one more urgent than the last. When it was time for the council meeting, June felt a mix of exhaustion and nervous energy. She stood before the curved table where representatives from all major species sat. Commander Day and his military advisors sat at one end. They watched her with cold eyes as she began. Council members, June started, her voice steady despite her fatigue. The temporal anomaly threatening our worlds is not a simple distortion. It's a resonance cascade in the fabric of space-time itself. She displayed images of her device next to readings from the anomaly. My solution uses quantum resonance principles to create a counterharmony that will stabilize the distortion. One of the Tavari Council members interrupted. You expect us to believe that this sculpture can stop what our strongest weapons cannot? It's not about strength, June explained. The anomaly doesn't respond to force, it responds to patterns. My device creates the exact opposite pattern of the anomaly, canceling it out. Has this been tested? Asked a representative from another species. On a small scale, yes, June said. She showed data from her lab tests. The results are promising. With a full-scale version placed at the right location, I believe it can completely neutralize the anomaly. Commander Day stood up. This is a waste of valuable time. Every moment, We delay our missile launch puts more worlds at risk. He turned to the council. The human plays with arts and crafts while we face extinction. It's not arts and crafts, June replied, her patience wearing thin. It's applied quantum physics using materials that your hands are too clumsy to work with. The room fell silent at her bold words. An elderly council member from a species June didn't recognize spoke up. How long would it take to build your full-scale device, Ambassador? With the right materials and help, 6 hours, June answered. And where must it be placed? The Central Observatory Dome, the same location where the missiles would be launched. Commander Day's metal face showed no emotion, but his voice was cold as ice. So we must delay our proven military technology for an untested human theory? Unacceptable. The council began to debate among themselves. Voices grew louder as opinions clashed. June waited, knowing that every minute lost meant danger for more people. Finally, the head of the council raised a hand for silence. We have heard both options. Now we must vote. June held her breath as each council member cast their vote. When it finished, the count was displayed on the large screen. The vote was tied. In cases of deadlock, the head of the council said, "Emergency protocol gives final decision to the highest-ranking military officer present." All eyes turned to Commander Day, who stood slowly. "My decision is clear. The missiles will launch as planned in 6 hours. The humans' project is denied." June felt like the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. After all her work, all her effort, it would end like this. But then Bin stepped forward. "Commander, I invoke Section 47 of the Confederation Charter. When facing extinction-level threats, all viable alternatives must be pursued simultaneously." Dia looked at Ben with surprise. "That section is rarely used." "Because we rarely face extinction," Ben replied. "The charter is clear. Both approaches must be tried if resources allow." The council members murmured among themselves. June could see many of them nodding. "Do we have enough resources for both approaches?" the head of the council asked. "Yes," Ben answered before Day could speak. "My science team can assist the human without affecting military preparations. The missiles can be ready to launch immediately if the human solution fails." Commander Day's yellow eyes narrowed, but he was trapped by his own people's laws. Well, the human may proceed with her experiment, but the moment it fails, the missiles launch." As the council meeting ended, June rushed back to the lab with Hyun and Bin. "We need to move quickly," she said. 6 hours isn't much time. "And we still need to get access to the observatory dome," Hyun reminded her. "Leave that to me," Bin said. "Focus on completing your device." For the next 4 hours, June worked without rest. Her fingers moved with incredible speed and precision despite her exhaustion. The crystal structure grew larger and more complex, filling the lab with shimmering light. When she finally stepped back, her creation stood taller than she did, a beautiful network of crystal threads and metal connections that hummed with energy. "It's ready," she said, her voice hoarse from tiredness. "Perfect timing," Ben said as he entered the lab. "I've arranged transport to the observatory dome, but we must hurry. Commander Day has ordered final preparations for the missile launch." As they carefully loaded June's creation onto a transport platform, emergency alarms blared through the station. "Attention all personnel," the station's AI announced. "Temporal anomaly has accelerated expansion. Estimated time to impact with Nexus 7, 90 minutes. This is not a drill. Proceed to evacuation vessels immediately." June, Hyun, and Bin looked at each other. "We're out of time," Hyun said. "Then we move now," June replied, pushing the transport platform toward the door. "One way or another, this ends today." The journey to the Central Observatory Dome was not easy. The station shook violently now, and frightened people rushed through the corridors toward evacuation ships. June, Hyun, and Bin carefully guided the transport platform carrying June's crystal creation through the chaos. "Excuse us, emergency equipment coming through," Hyun called as they navigated around groups of people. The transport platform floated a few inches above the floor, but the delicate crystal structure on it still trembled with each movement. June walked alongside it, one hand always touching her creation to steady the most fragile parts. "Will it survive the trip?" Ben asked, concern in his yellow eyes. "It has to," June replied simply. When they reached the entrance to the observatory dome, they found 4 Tavari guards blocking the way. Behind them, through the clear doors, June could see Commander Day and his team preparing the temporal missiles for launch. "Halt," one guard said, raising a metal hand. "This area is restricted to military personnel only." Ben stepped forward. "I have council authorization for this project," he said, showing his official badge. "Section 47 is in effect." The guards looked uncertain. One of them touched his communication device, presumably contacting Commander Day. After a brief conversation, the doors opened. Commander Day himself walked out, his metal face showing barely controlled anger. "So you actually built it," he said, looking at June's creation with disdain. "A pretty arrangement of crystals to save us all." "It will work," June said, "but we need to set it up now. The anomaly is getting closer." "My missiles are ready to launch in 30 minutes, Day replied. "They will solve this problem with Tavari strength, not human weakness." "The council voted for both approaches," Ben reminded him. "You must allow us access." For a moment it seemed like Day might refuse. Then he stepped aside. "Very well. You have 20 minutes to prove your theory. Then we launch the missiles, regardless of the outcome." They wheeled the platform into the observatory dome, a massive circular room with a transparent roof that showed the stars above. The dome was filled with advanced equipment, screens showing the approaching anomaly, and in the center, 3 large missile-shaped devices pointed toward the sky. "We need to position it there," June said, pointing to a spot near the center of the dome right beside the missiles. "That's within the launch area," one of Day's officers objected. "It could interfere with the missiles." "Exactly," June thought, but didn't say. Instead, she replied, "It needs to be at the focal point of the dome for maximum effect." Commander Day nodded reluctantly, and they moved the platform into position. The station shook again, harder this time, and everyone grabbed onto something to stay upright. "Attention all personnel," the station's AI announced. "Temporal anomaly will reach Nexus 7 in 60 minutes. All non-essential personnel must evacuate immediately." "We need to hurry," Hyun said, helping June unload the crystal structure from the platform. Setting up the device took time and care. Each crystal thread needed to be perfectly positioned, each connection secure. June worked with incredible focus, her hands moving with precision and grace despite her exhaustion. The Tavari soldiers watched with skeptical expressions, but they seemed impressed by the complexity of what she had built. "Is this art or science?" one soldier asked quietly. "Both," Ben answered. "And perhaps something more." When the device was finally in position, it stood like a beautiful alien tree in the center of the dome, its crystal branches reaching upward, catching and reflecting light from all directions. It made no sound yet, but seemed to vibrate with potential energy. 15 minutes until missile launch," Commander Day announced, checking his timepiece. "If your device is going to work, human, now is the time." June nodded. She stood before her creation, hands hovering over the central crystal formation. This was the moment of truth. If she was wrong, billions might die. If she was right, "Everyone step back," she instructed. "The activation will create a strong quantum field." As people moved away, June took a deep breath. She looked at her hands, the same hands that the Tavari had mocked for months, the hands they called weak and useless, the hands that might now save everyone. She began to touch specific points on the crystal structure, her fingers moving in a careful pattern. Each touch produced a soft musical tone, and slowly, the tones began to combine into a complex harmony. The crystal structure started to glow from within, soft blue light spreading through the network of filaments. On the screens around the dome, the image of the temporal anomaly flickered. "Something's happening," Ben said, pointing to the data readings. "The anomaly is responding." June didn't look up. She continued her work, touching crystal after crystal in a precise sequence that she had worked out during her sleepless nights. The harmony grew more complex, filling the dome with sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The light from the crystal structure intensified, bathing the dome in blue and purple waves. The air itself began to shimmer as the quantum field expanded. 10 minutes to missile launch, Commander Day announced, but his voice didn't sound as confident now. On the screens, the temporal anomaly was changing shape. Its wild, chaotic swirling slowed and began to form patterns that matched the light waves pulsing from June's creation. "It's working," Hyun exclaimed. "The anomaly is stabilizing." But then something went wrong. One of the crystal threads cracked, with a sharp sound, and the harmony faltered. The anomaly on the screen began to expand again, faster than before. "What happened?" Bin asked, stepping closer despite the warning. "A resonance imbalance," June replied, her voice tense. "One of the harmonic nodes failed." "Then your device has failed," Commander Day said. "We launch the missiles now." "No," June shouted. "Give me 5 more minutes, I can fix it." "The anomaly will reach us in 27 minutes, Day replied. "We cannot wait." June looked at her creation, at the broken crystal thread that threatened everything. She knew what needed to be done, but it was dangerous. The quantum field could harm living tissue if touched directly. Without hesitation, she reached into the glowing network of crystals. Pain shot through her arm as the energy field touched her skin, but she ignored it. Her fingers found the broken thread and held the pieces together. "What are you doing?" Hyun cried. "June, that's dangerous." "I know," June replied through gritted teeth. With her free hand, she continued the activation sequence, touching crystal after crystal as the broken piece in her other hand began to heal in the energy field. The harmony returned, stronger than before. The light grew so bright that everyone had to shield their eyes. On the screens, the temporal anomaly began to fold inward, its chaotic energy forming into a perfect spiral. 5 minutes to missile launch, one of Day's officers announced. "Belay that order," Commander Day said, his eyes fixed on the screens. "Look." The anomaly continued to collapse inward, becoming smaller and more stable with each passing second. The wild energy that had threatened entire star systems was being contained, folded back on itself into a harmless loop. In the center of the dome, June finally withdrew her hand from the crystal network. Her skin was red and blistered, but she didn't seem to notice the pain. She watched the screens with everyone else as the anomaly shrank to a tiny point and then vanished completely. Silence filled the dome. Then a cheer erupted from the technicians monitoring the data. "Anomaly neutralized," someone confirmed. "All readings normal." Hyun rushed to June, examining her injured hand. "You need medical attention," she said, but she was smiling through. Tears Bin approached them both. "You did it," he said to June. "You actually did it." Commander Day stood silently for a long moment, looking at the human who had succeeded where his missiles had not. Finally, he walked over to June. "Ambassador," he said formally, "it appears I owe you an apology." June looked up at the towering Tavari commander. "For what exactly?" "For underestimating the strength of human hands," Day replied. He looked at her creation, still glowing softly in the center of the dome. "It seems that strength takes many forms." In the days that followed, news of June's achievements spread throughout the Confederation. The Council held a special ceremony to honor her contribution, and new agreements were signed that elevated humanity's status among the species. The crystal structure remained in the observatory dome, both a monument and a defense system, ready to activate if another anomaly ever appeared. Scientists from many worlds came to study it, trying to understand how art and science had combined to create something so powerful. As for June, she continued her work as ambassador, but with a new respect from the Tavari and other species. Whenever someone commented on human physical weakness, they were reminded of the hands that had sculpted a weapon that ended time itself. And in her private moments, June would look at the scars on her hand from that day in the dome and smile. They were proof that sometimes the greatest strength comes in the most unexpected forms.